people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they build nothing after 5 p.m. They wake up tired, they rush through traffic, or scroll through notifications. They trade their time for money, and then, at the end of the day, they trade their energy for comfort. And slowly, quietly, invisibly, they build a life they never actually chose. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. The difference between the wealthy and everyone else is not what they do from 9 to 5. It's what they build after. In this audiobook, Side Hustle Secrets, you will discover what the rich are really doing when no one is watching. Not the flashy moments, not the social media highlights, but the silent hours, the overlooked decisions, the habits that don't look impressive until they change everything. We're going to break this journey into chapters. You'll learn why your current routine is quietly keeping you stuck, how the wealthy think differently about time, energy, and risk, how to start something small and grow it into something that works for you instead of against you, and most importantly, how to stay consistent when nobody is clapping. Because here's the line you need to remember. Your future is built in the hours nobody tracks. This is not financial advice. This is not a promise of overnight success. This is a reality check and a roadmap. And if you stay with this until the end, you will never look at your evenings the same way again. Because right now, there are 2 versions of you. One who finishes work and disappears into distractions, and one who finishes work and begins building freedom. The question is, which one are you becoming? Let's begin. Chapter 1, The Invisible Hours That Decide Your Life. There is a part of your day that no one respects enough. It doesn't have meetings. It doesn't have deadlines. No one is watching. No one is evaluating. And because of that, most people waste it. But the wealthy, they protect it. They understand something most people never fully realize. Time is not just money. Time is leverage. Think about this. 2 people can earn the exact same salary, work the same job, live in the same city, but 5 years later, their lives look completely different. One is still stuck. The other has options. Why? Because one spent their evenings consuming and the other spent their evenings creating. This idea is simple, but not easy. Because when you finish your job, your brain is tired, your willpower is low, your body wants comfort, and that's exactly where most people lose. They don't lose in big, dramatic moments. They lose in small daily decisions. Scrolling instead of studying, watching instead of building, complaining instead of planning. It doesn't feel like failure, it feels like rest. But here's the truth. Rest is necessary, escape is dangerous. There is a difference between recovering your energy and avoiding your potential, and most people never learn that difference. They say they're tired, but they're not tired of work. They're tired of lack of progress. They say they need a break, but what they really need is direction. Because when you're building something meaningful, energy feels different, effort feels different, even struggle feels different. This is where everything starts to shift. You stop asking, what do I feel like doing tonight? And you start asking, what am I building tonight? That one question changes your identity. Now suddenly, your evening is not empty time. It's construction time. And what you build in those hours, that becomes your escape route. But here's where it gets deeper. Most people don't start because they think they need something big, a perfect idea, a perfect plan, a perfect moment. But the wealthy, They don't wait for perfect. They start with imperfect, a small idea, a simple skill, a rough attempt, because they understand something powerful. Momentum creates clarity, not the other way around. You don't figure everything out first. You begin, and the path reveals itself. Think about it. Every successful business, every skill, every income stream started as something small, uncertain, and incomplete. But the difference is, someone chose to keep going when it was boring, when it was slow, when it didn't feel worth it yet. And that's where most people quit. Not because they can't succeed, but because they can't stay consistent long enough to see it happen. Let me tell you about a pattern you need to recognize. There are 3 stages to building anything. Stage 1, invisible effort. Stage 2, slow progress. Stage 3, visible results. Most people quit in stage 1. Almost everyone quits in stage 2. And only a few reach stage 3. Not because they're smarter, not because they're luckier, but because they stayed. They kept showing up when it didn't feel rewarding. They kept building when nobody noticed. They kept going when it felt like nothing was happening. And then one day, everything compounds. But from the outside, it looks like luck. It looks like overnight success. It looks like they figured it out. But you know the truth now. They didn't figure it out overnight. They built it quietly. So here's a simple challenge for you. Tonight, don't change your whole life. Just change 1 hour. 1 hour where you choose growth over comfort, creation over consumption, discipline over distraction. Because, as one of the ideas in the reference material hints, small, consistent actions reshape your entire trajectory over time. 1 hour doesn't seem like much, but 1 hour a day for a year, that's 365 hours of focused growth. That's enough to learn a skill, start a business, change your direction completely. The question is not whether you have time. The question is, what are you doing with the time you already have? And if this moment is hitting you, if you're realizing how much potential has been sitting unused, then make this a contract with yourself. Not a promise to me, not a promise to anyone else. A quiet agreement with your future. That starting today, your evenings will mean something. And if this thought resonates with you, pause for a second and ask yourself, what could your life look like if you protected just 1 hour every day? Hold on to that question, because in the next chapter, we're going to uncover the real reason most people never even start, and why the rich think about effort completely differently. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Dear viewer, we now have over 150 videos on our channel. That's a huge number, and we want to thank you, our viewers and subscribers, so much for that. You inspire us to create great videos every time and choose the best topics for our audiobooks. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time to do so. We have big plans for this channel. Thank you. Chapter 2, Why Most People Never Start, and Why the Rich Start Anyway. There's a moment that decides everything. It's not when you succeed. It's not when you make your first dollar. It's not even when you have a good idea. It's the moment you hesitate. The moment you think, what if this doesn't work? That single thought has quietly killed more dreams than failure ever could. Because failure teaches. But hesitation? Hesitation freezes. Most people don't lack ideas. They lack permission from themselves. They wait for certainty. They wait to feel ready. They wait for the fear to disappear. But here's the truth you need to hear clearly. The fear never disappears. You just become someone who moves with it. The wealthy understand this early. They don't wait until they feel confident. They act until they become confident. And that shift changes everything. Think about how you've been conditioned from school to work to society. You were taught to avoid mistakes, to follow instructions, to stay within safe boundaries. And that works for a job. But it destroys your ability to build something of your own. Because building requires uncertainty. It requires trying things that might not work. It requires starting before you feel ready. And most people, they've been trained their entire life to avoid exactly that. So when the opportunity appears, they freeze, they overthink, they research endlessly, they prepare without ever starting, and it feels productive, but it's not progress. It's fear, disguised as preparation. Let's break this illusion. There are two types of thinking. The first is passive thinking. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if it's already too late? This kind of thinking creates hesitation. It makes you smaller, slower, more doubtful. Then there's active thinking. What's one small step I can take today? What skill can I start learning right now? What can I build with what I already have? This kind of thinking creates movement, and movement creates opportunity. The rich don't sit in passive thinking. They move into action quickly, not recklessly, but decisively, because they understand something most people don't. You don't need the full map. You need the first step. Let me tell you about a pattern you'll start noticing everywhere. People who stay stuck talk about what they're going to do. People who move forward do it quietly. There's a kind of energy that comes from talking about your plans. It feels like progress. It feels like validation. But it's a trap. Because the moment you talk too much about what you're going to build, you satisfy the emotional reward without doing the work. And then nothing happens. That's why the wealthy often move in silence, not because they're secretive, but because they're focused. They don't need approval. They don't need applause. They need results. And results don't come from talking. They come from building. This idea echoes deeply in the mindset patterns you've seen in the reference material, where silent work often outperforms loud intentions. Now here's where things get uncomfortable, because starting something on the side will expose you. It will show you where you're weak, where you procrastinate, where you doubt yourself. It will challenge your discipline, and most people avoid that. They'd rather stay comfortable in a routine that feels safe than face the discomfort of growth. But here's the reality. Comfort is expensive. It costs you your future. Every night you choose comfort over progress. You reinforce the version of yourself that stays stuck. And every night you choose growth. You strengthen the version of yourself that evolves. It's not about one big decision. It's about repeated small decisions. Let's talk about energy, because people often say, I don't have the energy to start something after work. But look closer. It's not a lack of energy. It's a lack of alignment. When you're doing something meaningless, everything feels draining. But when you're building something that matters to you, energy shows up differently. You still get tired, but you don't feel empty. There's a difference. One drains you, the other builds you. So how do you actually start? Not in theory, but in reality. You lower the barrier. You stop trying to build something massive. And you focus on something simple. a skill you can learn, a service you can offer, a small idea you can test. You don't need to quit your job. You don't need to take massive risks. You just need to begin, quietly, consistently, without overthinking every step. Here's something you need to understand deeply. Your first attempt will not be impressive. Your first version will not be perfect. Your first results will not be exciting. And that's exactly how it's supposed to be. Because the goal is not perfection. The goal is progress. And progress builds confidence. Confidence builds momentum. Momentum builds results. If you're waiting to feel ready, you'll be waiting forever. If you're waiting for the perfect idea, you'll miss every opportunity. If you're waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to start, you're giving away control of your life. At some point, you have to decide, not when it's easy, not when it's clear, but when it's uncertain. So here's your next challenge. Don't think about building something big. Think about starting something small, tonight or tomorrow. Pick one direction and take one real step. Not planning, not researching, not imagining, doing. Because the moment you take action, you cross a line. You stop being someone who wants more, and you become someone who is building more. And if this is hitting you right now, if you can feel that tension between where you are and where you could be, then don't ignore it. That feeling is awareness, and awareness is the beginning of change. If this part resonated with you, take a second and lock it in. Maybe even comment to yourself mentally, what am I starting this week? Because clarity grows when you commit. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to go deeper. We're going to break down the exact mindset shift that separates people who stay employees forever from those who quietly build income streams that change their life. It's not about working harder. It's about thinking differently. And once you understand this shift, you'll never look at your job the same way again. Chapter 3. The employee mindset versus the builder. Mindset. There's a quiet difference that changes everything. It's not visible on the surface. It's not written in job titles. It doesn't show up in your paycheck, at least not immediately, but it shapes your entire future. It's the difference between thinking like an employee and thinking like a builder. Now understand this clearly. There is nothing wrong with having a job. A job can teach you discipline. It can give you structure. It can give you stability. But if your thinking stays limited to that role, your growth stays limited too. An employee mindset focuses on tasks. What do I need to finish today? What does my boss expect from me? How do I avoid mistakes? It's reactive, it's contained, it's safe. A builder mindset is different. It focuses on outcomes. What can I create? What problem can I solve? What can I build that exists without me trading time for it? It's proactive, it's expansive, it's uncomfortable. At first, here's where it gets real. When your workday ends, your mindset decides what happens next. The employee says, I've done enough today. The builder asks, what did I build today? That one shift, that one question, separates people who stay in the same place for years from those who quietly transform their entire life. Let's go deeper. An employee trades time for money. You show up, you perform tasks, you get paid. It's a direct exchange, and it works until you realize something. Your income is limited by your time. There are only so many hours in a day, only so much energy you can give. So no matter how hard you work, there's a ceiling. A builder sees this differently. They still work, but they think beyond the hour. They think in systems, something they can create once and benefit from repeatedly. It could be a skill, a digital product, a service that scales, a platform, a network. The form doesn't matter at first. The mindset does. Because once you start thinking this way, you stop asking, how can I make more money today? And you start asking, how can I build something that keeps working even when I don't? Now here's the part most people misunderstand. They think builders don't work hard, that somehow it's easier. It's not. In fact, in the beginning, builders work more. They use their job to survive and their evenings to build. That's the trade. Short-term comfort or long-term freedom. And most people choose comfort, not because they're lazy, but because they've never been shown a different way. There's a moment you'll recognize when your mindset begins to shift. It's subtle. You'll start noticing problems differently. Instead of complaining, you'll start thinking, could I solve this? Instead of consuming content, you'll start analyzing it. How is this made? How could I create something like this? What value is this given? Instead of scrolling aimlessly, you'll start becoming intentional. And that's when everything begins to change. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually, through repetition, through awareness, through choosing growth, again and again, just like the ideas reflected in the material you've seen, where consistency and focused self-investment build strength over time. You don't wake up one day completely different. You become different through small daily decisions. Let's address something important: fear. Because the builder mindset comes with more uncertainty, more risk, more responsibility, and that can feel overwhelming. You might think, what if I fail? What if I waste my time? What if nothing works? But here's the truth most people never face directly. You are already taking a risk by doing nothing, by staying the same, by depending entirely on one source of income. That's not safety, that's exposure. Because if that one thing disappears, so does your stability. A builder reduces risk by creating options, not overnight, not instantly, but steadily. One small project, one skill, one income stream, then another and another, until eventually you're no longer dependent on a single path. You have leverage, you have choice. Now pause for a second. Think about your current situation, your job, your routine, your evenings. Are you only maintaining your life, or are you building something beyond it? There's no judgment here, only awareness. Because awareness is where change begins. Here's something you can start doing immediately. Shift how you see your job, not as your final destination, but as your foundation. It funds your life. It supports your growth. It gives you the resources to build something more. But it's not the end, it's the beginning. And once you see it that way, you stop feeling trapped and you start feeling strategic. You go to work with a different mindset. You observe, you learn. You extract value, skills, processes, connections. Everything becomes useful. Everything becomes part of your growth. Because now, you're not just working, you're preparing. And when the day ends, that's when your real work begins. Not forced, not rushed, but intentional. One step at a time, 1 hour at a time, one decision at a time. If this shift is starting to click for you, hold on to it. Because this is where most people turn back. They understand the idea, but they don't apply it. And without action, nothing changes. So here's your next reflection. Ask yourself honestly, am I thinking like an employee or like a builder? And more importantly, what would a builder do tonight? Let that question guide you. because in the next chapter, we're going to break down something even more practical, the exact types of side hustles the wealthy actually build. Not the hype, not the trends, but the ones that quietly create real income and real freedom. And once you understand these categories, you'll stop guessing and start choosing with clarity. Chapter 4. The side hustles the rich actually build. There's a lie that keeps people stuck. It sounds convincing, it looks logical, and it quietly delays action. I just need to find the perfect side hustle. So people search, they scroll, they watch endless videos, top 10 side hustles, best ways to make money online, new trends, new opportunities, and somehow, after all that information, they still haven't started. Because the truth is, it's not about finding the perfect side hustle. It's about understanding the types of side hustles that actually work. Once you see the patterns, everything becomes clearer. The wealthy don't chase random ideas. They build within categories. And these categories are simple. Not easy, but simple. Let's break them down. The first type, skill-based hustles. This is where almost everyone should start. Why? Because you already have something, even if you don't realize it yet. Writing, design, editing, sales, communication, problem solving. These are not just skills, they are assets. And assets can be turned into income. A skill-based hustle is simple. You offer a service. You solve a problem for someone. You get paid. No fancy setup, no complex systems, just value exchanged for money. But here's the deeper truth. This stage is not just about earning, it's about learning. You learn how to deal with people, how to deliver results, how to improve your skill, and most importantly, you learn how money actually flows. Because money doesn't come from effort, it comes from value, just like the idea highlighted in the reference material. Money reflects perceived value, not just activity. And once you understand that, you stop chasing money and you start building value. The second type, product-based hustles. This is where things begin to scale. Instead of trading time directly, you create something once and sell it multiple times. It could be digital, an ebook, a course, a template, a tool, or even physical. But the principle is the same. You create once, and it continues working. Now here's the catch. Most people try to jump here too fast, without skills, without experience, without understanding what people actually need. And that's why they fail. Because products require insight. You need to know what works. You need to understand problems deeply. That's why the first stage matters. It builds the foundation. The third type, platform-based hustles. This is where attention becomes leverage. You build an audience through content, through ideas, through value. And over time, that audience becomes an asset because attention leads to opportunity. Opportunities to sell, to collaborate, to grow. But again, most people approach this the wrong way. They chase views, they chase likes, they chase validation instead of focusing on value. And without value, attention fades. The wealthy don't chase attention, they earn it by being useful, by being consistent, by showing up when others disappear. Now here's the most powerful part. These three types are not separate. They connect. You start with skills. You turn skills into products. You use platforms to scale everything. That's the path. Not overnight, but over time. Let's bring this back to reality. Because right now, you might be thinking, okay, but what should I actually do? And here's the honest answer. Start with what you have. Not what looks impressive, not what trends, what you can begin today. Maybe it's learning a skill. 1 hour a day, writing, design, editing, coding, communication. It doesn't matter which one. What matters is consistency, because skill compounds, and once it reaches a certain level, it becomes valuable. Maybe it's offering a simple service, helping someone with something you already know, starting small, learning as you go, improving with every step. Or maybe it's just finally deciding, that you're done waiting. Because here's the truth most people avoid. The problem is not a lack of opportunity. It's a lack of commitment. People want results. Without building anything, they want change. Without changing their actions. And it doesn't work like that. So let's ground this right now, in this moment. Ask yourself one simple question. What can I start building this week? Not next month, not someday. This week. Because the difference between people who succeed and those who stay stuck is not knowledge, it's execution. It's taking imperfect action again and again. If this is starting to resonate deeply, pause for a second and make it real, even if it's just in your mind. Choose a direction, commit to it, and start. Because in the next chapter, we're going to break down something even more critical: how to stay consistent when motivation disappears. Because starting is important, but staying consistent, that's where everything is won. And once you understand this, you'll realize that success is not about intensity. It's about endurance. We'd also like to remind you that we have a private members community on our channel. All members can vote on the topic of the next video, have priority in the comment section, and, most importantly, gain access to exclusive videos and lessons covering the most relevant topics and information specific to this month. Thank you. Let's keep moving forward. Chapter 5. Why consistency beats intensity. Every time there's a moment after excitement fades, and this is where most people disappear. At the beginning, everything feels powerful. You're motivated, you're inspired, you're ready to change your life. You plan, you imagine, you feel unstoppable. But then reality shows up, you get tired, work drains you, life gets busy, and suddenly, that energy you had at the start, it's gone. This is the exact point where most side hustles die. Not because they were a bad idea, but because they were built on motivation, and motivation is unreliable. Here's the truth you need to understand deeply. Motivation gets you started. Discipline keeps you going. If you rely on how you feel, you will quit. Because there will be days you don't feel like doing anything. Days when everything feels pointless. Days when progress feels invisible. And if your system depends on emotion, it collapses. The wealthy don't rely on motivation. They build systems, simple routines, repeatable actions, things they do, whether they feel like it or not. Because they understand something powerful. Consistency compounds, not intensity, not bursts of effort, not random moments of inspiration. Consistency. Let's break this down. Imagine two people. One works 10 hours on their side hustle once a week. The other works 1 hour every day at the end of the week. They've both done 7 hours, but the results completely different. Why? Because consistency builds momentum. It keeps your mind engaged. It keeps your skills sharp. It keeps your progress moving, while intensity burns out. Most people approach growth like a sprint. They go all in, push hard, then crash, then disappear, then start again, and repeat. But progress doesn't come from starting over. It comes from continuing. There's a concept you need to lock into your mind. Small actions, repeated daily, are stronger than massive actions done occasionally because small actions are sustainable. They fit into your life. They don't overwhelm you. They become habits. And habits build identity. Let's go deeper. Consistency is not just about action, it's about trust. Trust in yourself. Every time you show up, even when it's hard, you prove something to yourself. I do what I say I'll do. And that builds confidence. Real confidence. Not the kind that comes from hype, the kind that comes from evidence. This idea connects directly with something you've already seen, that discipline is not about feeling ready. It's about doing what must be done regardless of how you feel. And once you accept that, everything changes. Now let's talk about resistance, because it will show up in different forms. Procrastination, distraction, doubt. It will tell you, you can skip today. You'll do it tomorrow. It's not that important. And it sounds reasonable. It always does. But here's what you need to understand. Every time you skip, you weaken your momentum. And momentum is fragile. It takes effort to build and seconds to break. So what do? You make your system simple, almost too simple. You remove friction, you lower expectations. Instead of saying, I'll work 3 hours every night, you say, I'll work 1 hour, no excuses. And you stick to it, because consistency is not built on ambition. It's built on realism. It's built on what you can actually maintain day after day, week after week. There will be days when your work feels small, when it feels like it doesn't matter, when you question if it's worth it. And this is where most people quit, because they can't see the results yet. But here's the truth. Progress is happening, even when it's invisible. Skills are improving. Understanding is deepening. Momentum is building. Even if you don't see it yet, think of it like this. Drops of water hitting stone. Individually, nothing happens. But over time, they carve through it. That's consistency. So here's what you need to do. Stop chasing big results. Start protecting small actions. Focus on the process, not the outcome. Because the outcome will come if the process is consistent. Let's make this real. Starting today, your goal is simple. 1 hour, every day, no matter what. No excuses, no negotiation. Just show up. And if this resonates with you, make it a commitment, not a loud announcement, a quiet decision. Because the strongest moves are often the ones nobody sees. Ask yourself, can I stay consistent for 30 days? Not forever, just 30 days. Because if you can, you will change something fundamental. Not just your results, but your identity. And once your identity shifts, everything else follows. In the next chapter, we're going to break down one of the biggest silent killers of progress, distraction, the thing that steals your time, your focus, your potential, without you even realizing it. And once you see how it works, you'll start protecting your attention like it's your most valuable asset. Because it is. Chapter 6. The Silent Killer. How Distraction Steals Your Future. There is something quietly stealing your life, not in big, obvious ways, not in dramatic moments, but in small, repeated fragments. A few minutes here, a quick scroll there, a notification, a video, a message, and suddenly, an hour is gone, then another, and by the end of the day, there's nothing left for you. Distraction doesn't feel dangerous. It feels harmless. That's why it's so powerful. Because you don't fight it. You allow it. You justify it. You normalize it. But here's the truth you need to face. Distraction is not just wasting your time, it's redirecting your life. Every moment you give your attention to something meaningless, you take it away from something meaningful. And attention is your most valuable resource. Think about this carefully. You can lose money and earn it back. You can lose opportunities and find new ones. But time, once it's gone, it's gone. And distraction feeds on your time. Silently, relentlessly. The wealthy understand this at a different level. They don't just manage time, they protect attention because they know where your attention goes, your life follows. Now let's break this down. Most people believe they have a time problem. I don't have enough time. But in reality, they have an attention problem. They have time. They just don't control where it goes. Look at your day honestly. How much of it is intentional and how much of it is reactive? Responding to notifications, scrolling without purpose, watching things that don't build anything. It feels small, but it adds up. Just like the reference ideas pointed out, people often lose progress not because they lack effort, but because their focus is scattered and constantly interrupted. And scattered focus creates scattered results. Let's get real for a second. Distraction is designed. Apps, platforms, content, they are built to hold your attention, to keep you engaged, to make you stay. Because your attention is valuable. And if you don't control it, someone else will. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, because you can't build something meaningful with a distracted mind. You can't create when your focus is constantly broken. You can't grow when your attention is divided. Building a side hustle requires depth, focus, consistency, and distraction destroys all three. So what do? You don't try to eliminate distraction completely. That's unrealistic. You control it. You create boundaries. Start simple. 1 hour, protected. No notifications, no scrolling, no interruptions. Just focus. This hour becomes your space, your building time, your growth zone, and you treat it seriously, not casually, because here's the truth. If you treat your time casually, your results will be casual too. But if you treat your time with intention, your results become intentional. There's something powerful that happens when you remove distraction. Your mind sharpens. Your thinking deepens. Your work improves. And most importantly, you start seeing progress. And progress creates motivation, not the other way around. Now let's talk about a trap most people fall into. They try to multitask, build something while scrolling, learn something while checking messages. But multitasking is an illusion. You're not doing two things well. You're doing both poorly. Real progress requires focus, undivided attention, and that's rare today, which is exactly why it's valuable. If you can focus deeply, consistently, you gain an advantage most people don't have, not because you're smarter, but because you're present. So here's a challenge for you. Tonight, protect 1 hour. Completely, no distractions, no exceptions, just you and what you're building. It will feel uncomfortable at first. Your mind will wander. You'll feel the urge to check something. That's normal. That's conditioning. But if you stay with it, if you push through that resistance, something shifts. You regain control, and control is power. Let's take it deeper. Distraction is not just external, it's internal too. Overthinking, self-doubt, second-guessing, these are distractions as well. They pull you away from action. They keep you stuck in your head. So part of focus is learning to move despite those thoughts, not waiting for a clear mind, but acting with an imperfect one, Because clarity doesn't come before action. It comes from action. If this chapter is hitting you, pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, where is my attention going every day? And more importantly, is it building my future or avoiding it? Because once you see the answer, you can't ignore it, and that's where change begins. If this resonates with you, make a quiet commitment to protect your attention, to take it seriously, to use it intentionally. Because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something even deeper. How to build a side hustle. Even when you feel tired, overwhelmed, and mentally drained. Because let's be honest, that's the reality most people face. And if you can master that, you become unstoppable. Chapter 7, Building When You're Tired, the real test of discipline. There's a version of you that only shows up when everything feels right, when you're energized, when you're motivated, when the day went smoothly. That version of you is easy to be. But it's not the version that changes your life. The version that matters is the one that shows up when you're tired, when your energy is low, when your mind is heavy, when your day has already taken everything from you. That's the version that builds something real. Because, let's be honest, most days are not perfect. Work drains you. Responsibilities pile up. Your mind feels scattered, and in those moments, the easiest decision is to do nothing, to rest, to scroll, to escape. And sometimes, rest is necessary. But most of the time, it's not rest. It's avoidance. There's a difference. Rest restores you. Avoidance delays you. And if you're not careful, you start confusing the two. The wealthy don't wait for perfect conditions. They build in imperfect ones. They understand something most people ignore. Your worst days matter more than your best days, because your best days are easy. Anyone can show up when they feel good, but your worst days? That's where discipline is built. Let's go deeper. Think about how many times you've said, I'll start tomorrow. I'm too tired today. I'll do it when I have more energy. It sounds reasonable. It sounds justified. But here's the pattern. Tomorrow looks exactly like today. And the cycle continues. This is how people stay stuck for years. Not because they don't want more, but because they keep delaying the work that creates it. Now here's the truth you need to face. You will not always feel ready. You will not always feel energized. You will not always feel motivated. So, if your progress depends on how you feel, your progress will be inconsistent. But if your progress depends on a decision, then everything changes. You decide, no matter how I feel, I will show up. Even if it's not perfect, even if it's not your best work, even if it's just a small step, you show up. Because showing up maintains momentum, and momentum is everything. This connects deeply with something you've already seen. That discipline is about refusing to negotiate with your excuses, even when they sound convincing. And that's exactly what this chapter is about. Now let's make this practical. What do you do on days when you're exhausted? You reduce the intensity, but you keep the habit. Instead of 1 hour, maybe it's 30 minutes. Instead of building something complex, you do something simple, but you don't stop. Because stopping is dangerous, not because of one day, but because of what it creates. A break in momentum, a shift in identity. You go from, I'm someone who builds daily, to, I'll do it when I feel like it. And that shift is where most people lose everything. So you protect the habit at all costs, even in small ways. Let's go even deeper. When you show up on your worst days, you send a message to yourself. I don't depend on how I feel. I control my actions. And that builds something powerful, self-trust. Most people don't trust themselves not because they're incapable, but because they've broken too many promises to themselves. They said they would start, but didn't. They said they would stay consistent, but stopped. And over time, that creates doubt, not in your ability, but in your follow-through. Consistency rebuilds that trust, one day at a time, one action at a time, until eventually you become someone who keeps their word. And once you reach that point, everything changes, because now you don't need motivation. You don't need hype. You don't need external pressure. You have discipline. And discipline is freedom. Now here's something important. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be extreme. You just need to be consistent. Some days you'll do great work. Other days you'll do average work. And sometimes you'll barely do anything. But you still show up, because showing up is the real victory. Let's make this real tonight. If you feel tired, if you feel drained, if you feel like doing nothing, do something anyway, even if it's small, even if it's imperfect, even if it's just starting, because that action, that small decision, separates you from most people. If this is hitting you, pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, who do I become when I'm tired? Do you quit or do you continue? Because the answer to that question defines your future. If you're serious about this, make a quiet agreement, not to be perfect, but to be consistent, even on your worst days. Because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that silently holds people back, even when they're working hard. Fear of judgment, what people think, what people say, how it stops you before you even begin. And once you understand how to break that, you'll stop holding yourself back and start building freely. Chapter 8. The fear of judgment, the invisible cage. There's a fear that doesn't look like fear. It doesn't shout. It doesn't stop you in obvious ways. It whispers, what will people think? What if I look stupid? What if I fail in front of others? And just like that, you hesitate. You hold back. You don't start. This fear is quiet, but it's powerful, because it doesn't attack your ability. It attacks your willingness. Let's be honest. Most people don't fail publicly. They never even try publicly. They stay safe, invisible, comfortable. And it feels logical, because no one wants to be judged. No one wants to look like they don't know what they're doing. No one wants to fail in front of others. But here's the truth you need to understand. The cost of being judged is nothing compared to the cost of staying the same. Read that again, because most people reverse it. They avoid short-term discomfort and accept long-term regret. Let's go deeper. Why does this fear exist? Because from a young age, you were conditioned to seek approval. From teachers, from parents, from society. You were rewarded for being right, for fitting in, for not making mistakes. But building something requires the opposite. You will make mistakes. You will not have all the answers. You will look like a beginner, and that's where most people freeze. They want to skip the beginner stage. They want to look confident before they've earned it. They want to succeed without ever being seen struggling, and it doesn't work like that. Every person you admire was once inexperienced, was once unsure, was once learning in public. But here's the difference. They accepted it. They moved anyway. Let's make this real. You want to start a side hustle. Maybe it's creating content, offering a service, building something online, and immediately the thoughts appear. What will my friends think? What if people judge me? What if I fail? So instead of starting, you wait, you overthink, you stay silent. But here's what you're not seeing. Most people are too focused on themselves to focus on you. They're dealing with their own doubts, their own insecurities, their own fears, and even if someone judges you, what changes? Nothing. Your life is still yours. Your path is still yours. Your growth is still yours. This idea connects with something deeper. That real progress happens when you stop seeking validation and start focusing on your own path, because validation is a distraction. Now here's a powerful shift. Instead of asking, "What will people think?" ask, "What will happen if I don't start?" Where will you be in a year? In the same place? With the same thoughts? The same frustration? That's the real risk, not judgment, stagnation. Let's talk about identity. Because fear of judgment is tied to how you see yourself. If you see yourself as someone who needs approval, you will hesitate. But if you see yourself as someone who is building something, you move differently. You don't need everyone to understand. You don't need everyone to support you. You don't need everyone to agree. You just need to act. There's a powerful concept you need to hold on to. You are allowed to be a beginner, not perfect, not polished, not impressive, just starting. And starting is what creates everything else. Now let's make this practical. If fear of judgment is holding you back, start small, quietly. You don't need to announce everything. You don't need to show everything. You just need to begin. Build in private. Learn in silence. Improve without pressure. And when you're ready, you share, not for validation, but for growth. Because the goal is not to impress people. The goal is to build something real. Let's go even deeper. Fear of judgment often hides something else. Fear of failure. But failure is not what you think. Failure is not the end. It's feedback. Every attempt teaches you something. What works, what doesn't, what to improve. And without that feedback, you stay stuck. So instead of fearing failure, use it. Learn from it. Grow through it. If this is hitting you, pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, how much of my life has been controlled by what others might think? And more importantly, is it worth it? Because at some point, you have to choose comfort or growth, approval or progress, silence or action. If this resonates with you, make a quiet decision, not to eliminate fear, but to move despite it, because confidence doesn't come first. Action does. And once you start moving, confidence follows. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about something even more practical. How to actually manage your time so you can build a side hustle without burning out. Because this is where many people struggle. They either do too much or nothing at all. And there's a balance. Once you understand it, everything becomes sustainable. Dear viewer, share your success story, even if it is small. It can motivate other people to visit the comment section and read it, and it can inspire them. Also, don't be shy about asking questions, and perhaps someone with more experience or someone who has been through this will share the answer. Remember, it is only through communication that people become stronger and better. Thank you. Chapter 9. Time is a mirror. How to build without burning out. Most people don't fail because they don't have time. They fail because they don't manage energy focus, and priorities. They try to do everything and end up doing nothing consistently. Let's be real. You already have responsibilities, a job, family, obligations. Your time is not unlimited. So when people say underscore, underscore, quote, underscore 65, underscore, underscore, it sounds unrealistic because you can't just add more hours to your day. But here's the shift you need to understand. You don't need more time. You need better structure because time is a mirror. It reflects what you value. Look at your day honestly. Not what you say matters, but what you actually do. Where does your time go? Because that tells the truth. This connects deeply with something simple but powerful. That even one focused hour per day can create massive change over time. Not because the hour is magical, but because it's intentional. So instead of trying to overhaul your entire life, you build around one non-negotiable block. 1 hour. Protected, focused, consistent. This is your foundation, your anchor. No matter how busy your day gets, this hour remains. Now here's where most people make a mistake. They try to do too much too soon. They plan long sessions, big goals, extreme routines, and it works for a few days. Then reality hits. They get tired, overwhelmed, burned out, and they stop because they built intensity, not sustainability. The wealthy think differently. They don't aim for perfect schedules. They aim for repeatable systems, things they can maintain long term. Let's break this into something practical. Step 1, choose your hour, morning, evening, late night. It doesn't matter. What matters is consistency. Pick a time you can realistically protect. Step 2, define your focus. Not 10 things, not 5. One task, one skill, one direction. Because clarity reduces friction, and friction kills consistency. Step 3, remove distractions. Before you start, not during, put your phone away, close unnecessary tabs, create a focused environment. Because willpower is limited, structure is stronger. Step 4, lower expectations. This sounds strange, but it's powerful. Instead of saying, quote, 66, you say, quote, 67, because showing up is what builds everything else. Let's go deeper. Burnout doesn't come from working too much. It comes from working without direction, from feeling like your effort isn't leading anywhere, from pushing without progress. But when you have clarity, when you know what you're building, effort feels different. It feels meaningful, even if it's hard, even if it's slow. So the goal is not to do more, it's to do what matters, consistently. Now let's address something important. Balance. Because some people go too far. They sacrifice everything, sleep, health, relationships, for progress. And that's not sustainable. That's not success. That's imbalance. Real growth is built alongside your life, not at the cost of it. So you don't need to destroy your routine, you need to refine it. Maybe you wake up 30 minutes earlier. Maybe you reduce time spent on distractions. Maybe you replace one habit with another. Small changes, big impact. Because remember, this is not a sprint, it's a long-term build. Let's make this real again. Imagine this, 1 hour a day, focused, consistent, for 6 months. What could you build? A skill, a service, an income stream? Something that didn't exist before. That's the power of structure. Now here's something deeper. When you manage your time well, you reduce stress, you reduce overwhelm, because you know you're moving forward, even if the progress is small, and small progress builds confidence. Confidence builds momentum. Momentum builds results. It all connects. So instead of chasing more time, start respecting the time you already have. Protect it, use it, build with it. If this chapter is hitting you, pause for a moment and ask yourself, quote, 68, and more importantly, quote, 69, because that 1 hour could change everything. If this resonates with you, make it real. Decide your hour. Protect it. Commit to it, not for a day, not for a week, but as a habit. Because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something even more powerful, how money actually works, and why most people never keep what they earn. Because building income is one thing, but keeping and growing it, that's a completely different game. And once you understand it, you'll start playing at a different level. Chapter 10, Why Making Money Isn't Enough. The game most people never learn. Most people think money is the goal. Make more, earn more, chase more. And on the surface, that makes sense because money solves problems. It gives you options. It creates freedom. It reduces stress. But here's the truth that changes everything. Making money is not the same as keeping money, and keeping money is not the same as growing money. This is where most people lose, not because they can't earn, but because they don't understand how money behaves. Think about this. There are people who earn a lot and still struggle. And there are people who earn less, but steadily build wealth. Why? Because income is only one part of the equation. What you do with it is what matters. This idea is reflected clearly in the reference material, where even high earners can end up with nothing if they don't manage and understand money properly. And that's the gap. Let's break it down simply. There are 3 stages: earning, keeping, growing. Most people focus only on the first and ignore the rest. Stage 1, earning. This is where you start. Your job, your side hustle, your skills. You create income. This is important, but it's not enough. Because if everything you earn leaves as quickly as it comes, you stay in the same place. Stage 2, keeping. This is where discipline shows up again. Not in your time, but in your money. Do you control your spending, or does your lifestyle control you? This is where most people fall into a trap. As income increases, so do expenses. Better lifestyle, more comfort, more consumption, and suddenly, more money doesn't mean more freedom. It just means more responsibility. The wealthy think differently. They don't upgrade their lifestyle immediately. They upgrade their assets first. Because they understand something simple. Freedom comes from what you keep, not what you earn. Now let's go deeper. Keeping money is not about being cheap. It's about being intentional. Every dollar you spend is a decision, a direction, a choice. Does it move you forward or does it keep you in place? Most people don't think about this. They spend based on emotion, convenience, impulse, habits, and over time, those small decisions compound, just like your time. Your money reflects your priorities. Now let's move to the 3rd stage, the one most people never reach. Stage 3, growing. This is where money starts working for you instead of you working for it. But this doesn't happen automatically. It requires awareness, patience, and strategy. Because money that sits does nothing, but money that's directed can multiply. Now here's the important part. You don't need to be an expert to begin. You don't need complex systems. You don't need perfect knowledge. You just need to understand the principle. Build income. Keep a portion. Use that portion to create more income. Simple, not easy, but simple. And this connects directly to your side hustle, because your side hustle is not just extra money, it's leverage. It gives you a second stream, a second source, a second layer of security. And once you have that, everything changes. Your job becomes less stressful, because it's not your only option. Your decisions become stronger because you're not dependent on one path. Your mindset shifts from survival to strategy. Now let's address something important. Many people think underscore, quote, underscore 70, underscore. But that's a mistake, because habits don't change with income, they amplify. If you don't manage well now, you won't manage well later. So the goal is to start early, even if it's small. Save a little, track a little, think a little more intentionally, because small habits create big outcomes. Let's bring this back to reality. Right now, you're building something, a skill, a hustle, an income stream, and when that money starts coming in, what you do next matters. Do you spend it immediately, or do you use it to build something bigger? That decision repeats over time and shapes your future. If this chapter is hitting you, pause for a moment and ask yourself, quote, 71, and more importantly, quote, 72, because awareness is the first step to control. If this resonates with you, make a quiet shift, not dramatic, not extreme, just intentional, because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that separates those who build wealth from those who stay busy. Leverage, how to multiply your efforts so your work doesn't stay linear. And once you understand this, you'll stop thinking in hours and start thinking in systems. Chapter 11. Leverage, how the rich multiply. Time, money, and effort. There's a point where working harder stops working. You can put in more hours, push more effort, stay busier, but eventually you hit a limit because your time is finite, your energy is finite, and if everything depends on you, growth becomes slow, linear, predictable. This is where most people stay. They work harder, but they don't move forward faster. The wealthy see this differently. They don't just work, they use leverage. Leverage is a simple idea, but it changes everything. It's how you multiply your output without multiplying your effort. Instead of doing everything yourself, you build systems, assets, processes, things that continue working even when you stop. Let's break this into something clear. There are three main forms of leverage: time leverage, skill leverage, system leverage, time leverage. This is the most obvious. You use other people's time, not in a negative way, but in a strategic way. Instead of doing every task yourself, you delegate, you outsource, you free up your time for higher value work. But here's the reality. Most people can't start here because they haven't built anything yet. So don't focus here first. Focus on what you can control. Skill leverage. This is where it begins. You develop a skill that produces more value per hour. Instead of earning the same amount for your time, you increase your value. Think about it. A beginner earns little. An expert earns more. Not because they work longer, but because their skill is more valuable. So your first leverage is improvement, getting better, becoming more useful. And this connects directly to something we touched on earlier. That value determines income, not just effort. System leverage. This is where everything changes. Instead of trading time directly, you build something that scales. A product, a platform, a process. Something that continues working even when you're not actively involved. This is what separates income from wealth, because income requires effort, but leverage creates freedom. Let's make this practical right now. You're in the early stage. You're building, learning, improving. So your focus is simple. Build skills. Create something small, stay consistent, but over time, you start to see opportunities, ways to make your work more efficient, ways to reach more people, ways to scale what you're doing. And that's where leverage begins. Here's an example. At the start, you offer a service, you trade time for money. Then, you notice patterns, common problems, repeated requests, so you create a solution, a product, a system, something that solves that problem once and can be used multiple times. Now your effort multiplies. Instead of working more, you're working smarter. But here's the key. Leverage comes after consistency, not before. Most people want leverage without building anything first. They want passive income without active effort, and that's why they fail, because leverage requires a foundation, skills, experience, understanding. You can't skip the process, but if you stay consistent, if you build patiently, leverage becomes natural. Now let's go deeper. Leverage is not just external, it's mental too. It's how you think. Do you think in hours or do you think in outcomes? Most people think, quote, 73 builders think, quote, 74. That shift changes your direction completely. You stop chasing effort. You start building systems, and systems create scale. Now let's bring this back to you. Right now, you don't need complex leverage. You don't need advanced strategies. You need to build, learn, stay consistent, but you also need awareness of where you're going. Because once you reach a certain level, you don't want to stay stuck trading time forever. You want to evolve from effort to leverage, from work to systems, from income to freedom. If this chapter is hitting you, pause for a moment and ask yourself, underscore, quote, underscore, 75, underscore. Because that question will guide your decisions. If this resonates, make a quiet shift. Start thinking beyond today, beyond this week, beyond your current routine. Think long-term, think strategically. Because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something even deeper, patience, why most people quit too early, and how to stay in the game long enough to actually win. Because success is not just about what you do, it's about how long you're willing to keep doing it. And that changes everything. Dear viewers, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Chapter 12, The Patience Advantage, Why Most People Quit Before It Works. There's a moment in every journey where nothing seems to be happening, no big results, no recognition, no clear signs that it's working, just effort, repeated, daily, quietly. And this is where most people stop, not because they're incapable, but because they expect results too soon. They start something. They stay consistent for a few days, maybe a few weeks, and when nothing changes immediately, they begin to doubt. Quote 76, quote 77, quote 78. And slowly, they fade out. This is the moment that separates everyone. Not talent, not intelligence, not luck, patience, the ability to stay when results are invisible. Let's be honest. We live in a world that rewards speed, fast results, instant feedback, immediate gratification. You post something. You expect likes. You try something. You expect progress. But real growth doesn't work like that. It's slow, quiet, unseen, and because it's unseen, it feels like nothing is happening. But here's the truth you need to understand deeply. Just because you can't see progress doesn't mean it isn't happening. Skills are building. Understanding is growing. Patterns are forming, even if it's not visible yet. Think about this. A seed doesn't grow overnight. You plant it, water it, wait. And for a long time, nothing appears. But beneath the surface, everything is happening. Roots are forming, strength is developing, and then one day, it breaks through. Your side hustle is the same. At first, it's invisible. You're learning, practicing, improving, and it feels like nothing. But if you stay consistent, if you keep going, eventually, it shows. Now here's where most people go wrong. They compare their beginning to someone else's middle. They see results, success, growth, and they think underscore, quote, underscore 79, underscore. But what they don't see is the time, the effort, the invisible phase. Everyone who succeeds went through it. But most people quit before they reach it. This connects directly to something you've already seen. That real strength is built in the unseen moments, when nobody is watching and nothing feels rewarding. That's where your future is decided. Now let's go deeper. Patience is not passive. It's not waiting without action. It's active persistence. You keep showing up. You keep improving. You keep building, even when there's no immediate reward. That's what makes it powerful. Because most people can't do it. They need feedback. They need validation. They need results to stay motivated. And when they don't get it, they stop. But if you can continue without those things, you gain an advantage, not because you're special, but because you're rare. Now here's something important. Patience doesn't mean doing the same thing blindly. It means adjusting, learning, improving. You don't just wait. You evolve. You refine your approach. You get better. You become more effective. But you don't quit. Because quitting resets everything. Every time you stop, you go back to zero, and starting over is harder than continuing. So the goal is simple. Stay in the game. Not perfectly, not intensely, but consistently. Long enough for results to catch up to your effort. Let's make this real. Imagine this. You stay consistent for 6 months. No big results, no major breakthroughs. Most people would quit. But you continue. Month 7, something shifts. Month 8, momentum builds. Month 9, results appear. Now it looks like success. But in reality, it's delayed progress. The result of everything you did when nothing was happening. This is the patience advantage. And once you understand it, you stop chasing quick wins and you start building something real. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly. Underscore, quote, underscore 80, underscore. Because your answer to that question determines everything. If you only stay for short-term rewards, you'll never reach long-term success. But if you can stay longer, push further, continue when others stop, you will eventually get there. Not because it's guaranteed, but because most people give up too early. If this chapter resonates with you, make a quiet decision, not to rush, not to force results, but to stay consistent, to trust the process, to keep building, even when it feels invisible. Because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something critical, how to choose the right path, without getting stuck in overthinking, because too many people stay in decision mode forever and never move. But once you understand how to choose, you stop hesitating. and you start building with clarity. And that is where momentum truly begins. Chapter 13, Stop Overthinking, How to Choose a Path and Move. There's a trap that looks like intelligence. It feels productive, it feels responsible, it even feels necessary, but it keeps you stuck. Overthinking. You analyze every option, compare every path, research every possibility, and somehow, after all that thinking, you still haven't moved. This is one of the biggest silent killers of progress. Not laziness, not lack of opportunity, but indecision. Because when you don't choose, you stay exactly where you are. Let's break this down. Why do people overthink? Because they want certainty. They want to know, quote, 81, quote, 82, quote, 83. But here's the truth you need to accept. You will never have full certainty before you start. Clarity doesn't come from thinking, it comes from doing. Most people reverse this. They try to think their way into clarity before they take action. But it doesn't work, because real understanding comes from experience. You can read about it, watch videos about it, learn theories. But until you do it, you don't really know. This is why so many people stay stuck for months, even years. They're not inactive, they're mentally busy. But mental activity is not real progress. Now here's a powerful shift. Instead of asking, quote, 84, ask, quote, 85. That question removes pressure because you don't need perfection, you need direction. Let's make this practical. You're choosing a side hustle. There are many options, skills, products, content, and you feel overwhelmed. So here's what you do. You simplify. Pick one path based on three things: what you can start with, what you're willing to learn, what you can stay consistent with. That's it. Not what's trending, not what looks impressive, what is realistic for you. Because the best path is the one you actually follow. Now here's the important part. You commit, not forever, but for a period. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. You give it real effort, real consistency, and then you evaluate. Not emotionally, but objectively. What worked, what didn't, what can improve, and then you adjust. This is how clarity is built. Through action, through feedback, through iteration, not through endless thinking. This connects directly to something deeper, that people who move forward are not the ones who wait for perfect conditions, but the ones who take action and adjust along the way. That's the difference. Now, let's go deeper. Overthinking often hides fear. Fear of failure, fear of wasting time, fear of choosing wrong. But here's the truth. There is no perfect path. Every path has challenges. Every path has uncertainty. The only mistake is not choosing at all. Because when you don't choose, you don't grow. You stay in the same place with the same questions, the same frustration. Now imagine this. Two people. One spends months thinking, planning, researching. The other chooses quickly, starts, learns, adjusts. After 6 months, who is further? Not the one who thought more, the one who moved, because action creates experience. Experience creates clarity, and clarity creates better decisions. It's a cycle, and it only begins when you start. Now here's something important. Your first choice doesn't define your life. It's just a starting point. You can change direction, you can pivot, you can evolve, but you can't do any of that if you never begin. So remove the pressure. You're not choosing your final destination. You're choosing your next step, and that's enough. Let's bring this back to you. Right now, there's probably something you've been thinking about. A skill, an idea, a direction, and you've been waiting for the right moment, the right clarity, the right confidence. But what if this is the moment? Not because everything is perfect, but because you've decided. So here's your challenge. Choose one path, just one, and commit to it. Not emotionally, but practically. Set a time frame. Set a routine. Start building and trust the process. Because clarity will come, not before, but after. If this chapter resonates with you, pause for a moment and ask yourself, quote, 86, and more importantly, quote, 87, because the difference between thinking and building is action. And once you act, everything changes. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about something even deeper, your environment, the people around you, the influences shaping your thinking, because whether you realize it or not, your environment is either pushing you forward or pulling you back. And once you see how it works, you'll start choosing it more carefully. Because success is not built alone, but it is influenced by who you surround yourself with. And that might be one of the most important shifts you make. Chapter 14, your environment is programming you. Choose it or be controlled by it. There's something shaping your life right now, and most of it is happening without your awareness, not your goals, not your plans, not even your effort, your environment, the people you talk to, the content you consume, the conversations you listen to. All of it is programming you, quietly, consistently. And here's the truth, most people don't realize you don't rise to your goals. You fall to your environment. Let that sink in. Because you can have ambition, you can have plans, you can have motivation, but if your environment doesn't support it, you will struggle. Let's break this down. Imagine you're trying to build something, a side hustle, a new skill, a different life, but everyone around you is focused on comfort, complaining, avoiding growth, staying the same. What happens? You feel resistance, not from them directly, but from the energy around you. Because humans adapt. We adjust to what's normal. If laziness is normal, you become comfortable with it. If growth is normal, you rise to it. This is why environment matters so much. It's not just physical, it's mental. What you watch, what you listen to, what you read. Because your mind absorbs everything, and over time, it shapes your beliefs, and your beliefs shape your actions. This connects deeply with something you've already seen, that your thinking determines your outcomes. And if your thinking is weak or scattered, your results follow. So if you want to change your life, you have to change what influences your thinking. Now let's go deeper. There are 3 types of environments you need to be aware of. The first is your social environment. The people around you. Do they challenge you? Or do they keep you comfortable? Do they talk about growth or just problems? This doesn't mean you need to cut people off aggressively, but it does mean you need awareness, because not everyone is on the same path, and that's okay, but you have to protect your direction. The second is your digital environment. This is where most people lose control. Endless scrolling, random content, constant distraction, and over time, it shapes your thinking. If you constantly consume entertainment, your mind seeks comfort. If you consume growth, your mind seeks progress. So you have to be intentional. Who are you learning from? What are you watching? What are you feeding your mind daily? Because your inputs create your outputs. The third is your internal environment, your thoughts, your self-talk, your mindset. Because even if everything outside is strong, if your internal environment is weak, you will struggle. Do you support yourself? Or do you constantly doubt yourself? Do you focus on solutions or problems? This is where real growth happens, because your external environment influences you, but your internal environment defines you. Now here's the powerful shift. You don't need a perfect environment. You need a controlled one. You start making small changes. Limit distractions. Choose better content. Spend more time around growth-oriented people, even if it's online, even if it's through books, even if it's through learning. Because proximity matters. The more you expose yourself to growth, the more natural it becomes. And over time, it changes your standards. What once felt difficult becomes normal. What once felt impossible becomes achievable. Let's make this real. Think about your current environment, your conversations, your habits, your daily inputs. Are they pushing you forward or holding you back? Be honest, because awareness is the first step. Now here's your challenge. Change one input, just one. Maybe it's what you listen to, what you watch, who you learn from. Replace something passive with something intentional, and do it consistently. Because small shifts create big changes over time. Now let's go deeper. Environment doesn't just influence action, it influences identity. If you surround yourself with growth, you start seeing yourself as someone who grows. If you surround yourself with comfort, you start seeing yourself as someone who avoids effort. And identity drives behavior. So choose carefully, because your environment is shaping who you become. If this chapter resonates with you, pause for a moment and ask yourself, quote, 88, and more importantly, quote, 89. Because once you see it, you can change it. And once you change it, everything else becomes easier. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about something even deeper, self-worth. Why many people stay stuck, not because they lack ability, but because they don't believe they deserve more. And once you understand this, you'll unlock a level of confidence that changes how you act, think, and build. Because everything you create starts with what you believe you're worth. And that changes everything. Chapter 15. Self-worth, the hidden ceiling on your income and growth. There's something deeper than skill, deeper than strategy, deeper than opportunity. And most people never address it. Self-worth. Because no matter what you learn, no matter what you build, no matter what opportunities appear, you will only rise to the level you believe you deserve. Let that sit for a moment, because this is where everything becomes real. You can have the best ideas, the best tools, the best timing, but if deep down you don't believe you're capable, you will hesitate, you will hold back, you will sabotage your own progress. And it won't look obvious. It will look like procrastination, overthinking, delaying action, but underneath it is doubt. Doubt that you're good enough, doubt that you can succeed, doubt that you deserve more. This is the invisible ceiling, and most people never break through it because they never see it. Let's go deeper. Think about how you talk to yourself, not out loud, but internally. When you think about starting something, what's your first reaction? Quote, 90, quote, 91, quote, 92. These thoughts feel normal, but they shape your actions. Because if you don't believe in yourself, you won't act with confidence. You'll hesitate. You'll second guess. You'll stay small. And over time, that becomes your reality. This connects deeply with something you've already seen, that people who don't believe they deserve more will never ask for more or go after it, because belief drives behavior. Now here's the truth you need to accept. Self-worth is not something you're born with. It's something you build through action, through consistency, through proving to yourself that you can do hard things. It's not about telling yourself positive things. It's about showing yourself evidence every time you show up, every time you stay consistent, every time you follow through. You build self-trust, and self-trust builds self-worth. Now let's make this practical. If you struggle with confidence, don't try to feel confident. Take action. Small actions, repeated. Because confidence is not the starting point, it's the result. You don't wait to believe. You act, and belief follows. Let's go even deeper. Self-worth also shows up in how you price your time. If you don't value your work, others won't either. If you underprice your services, undervalue your skills, accept less than you deserve, you reinforce a belief. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 93, underscore, underscore, and that belief keeps you stuck. So part of growth is learning to value yourself, not based on ego, but based on effort, on improvement, on what you bring to the table, because as your skills grow, your value increases, and you need to recognize that. Now, here's something important. Self-worth is not arrogance. It's not thinking you're better than others. It's knowing that you have something to offer and being willing to build on it. There's a quiet confidence that comes from this. Not loud, not forced, not performative, just grounded. You know what you're building, you know where you're going, and you move accordingly. Let's bring this back to your side hustle. When you start, you might feel unsure, inexperienced, not ready. That's normal. But if you let that stop you, you never grow. So instead, you accept it. You start where you are, and you improve, one step at a time, because every step forward reinforces a new belief. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 94, underscore, underscore, and over time, that belief becomes identity. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 95, underscore, underscore. And once that happens, everything changes. You stop hesitating. You stop doubting every move. You start acting with intention, because now you trust yourself. If this chapter is hitting you, pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, quote, 96, and more importantly, quote, 97, because once you see it, you can change it, and once you change it, your actions follow. If this resonates with you, make a quiet commitment not to become perfect, but to build trust with yourself through action, because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something powerful, momentum, how small wins turn into unstoppable progress. Because once you build momentum, everything becomes easier. And once you understand how to create it, you stop starting over and start moving forward continuously. And that is where real transformation begins. Friend, write your opinion on this topic in the comments. Do you agree with us or not? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Chapter 16, Momentum, How Small Wins Become Life-Changing Results. There's a force that most people underestimate. It's not talent, it's not intelligence, it's not even hard work alone. It's momentum. Momentum is what turns effort into results. It's what makes things feel easier over time. It's what carries you forward, even when you don't feel like moving. But here's the problem. Most people never build it because They keep stopping. They start something, get excited, put in effort, then life happens. They miss a day, then another, and suddenly they're back at zero. This cycle repeats over and over. Start, stop, restart, stop again. And every time they stop, they lose something important. Not just progress, momentum, because momentum needs continuity. It needs consistency. It needs repetition. Without it, everything feels hard. Every time you start again, it feels like the beginning. Heavy, slow, difficult. But when momentum is built, everything changes. Actions feel lighter. Progress feels faster. Effort feels more natural. Because you're already in motion. Let's break this down. Momentum is not built from big actions. It's built from small wins. Completing a task, showing up again, making progress, even if it's small. Each of these adds to your momentum, and over time, it compounds. This connects directly with something you've already seen. That small, consistent actions shape your growth far more than occasional bursts of effort. That's momentum in action. Now here's the powerful part. Momentum builds identity. When you act consistently, you start seeing yourself differently. Not as someone who tries, but as someone who does. Not as someone who starts, but as someone who continues. And that identity drives behavior. Because once you see yourself as consistent, you don't want to break that pattern. You protect it. Now let's go deeper. Momentum also reduces resistance. At the beginning, everything feels difficult. Starting is hard, thinking is heavy, action feels forced. But after a few days, a few weeks, something shifts. It becomes routine. Not easy, but familiar, and familiarity reduces friction. You don't think as much, you just act. That's the power of momentum. Now here's where most people go wrong. They wait for big wins. They think, I'll feel motivated when I see results. But it's the opposite. You see results because you stayed consistent, and consistency builds momentum. So instead of chasing big outcomes, you focus on small wins. Daily, consistent, intentional. Let's make this real. Imagine this. You commit to 1 hour a day. Day 1, it feels hard. Day 3, still resistance. Day 7, something starts to shift. Day 14, it feels normal. Day 30, it's part of your identity. That's momentum. And once you reach that point, you don't need motivation. You've built a system. Now let's go even deeper. Momentum is fragile. It's easy to break. 1 missed day becomes 2. 2 becomes a week. And suddenly, you're back at the beginning. That's why consistency matters so much, not perfection. Consistency. If you miss a day, you don't quit. You don't restart completely. You continue, because the goal is not to be perfect. It's to keep moving. Now here's something powerful. Momentum creates opportunities. When you stay consistent, people notice, skills improve, confidence grows, opportunities appear, not instantly, but over time. Because movement attracts progress. Stillness creates stagnation. Let's bring this back to you. Right now, you have a choice. You can stay where you are, start, stop, repeat. Or you can build momentum, one small action at a time. Every day, no excuses, no overthinking, just movement. Because once you build momentum, everything becomes easier. Not because the work changes, but because you change. You become someone who moves, someone who builds, someone who continues. If this chapter is hitting you, pause for a moment and ask yourself, am I building momentum or breaking it? Because that answer defines your progress. If this resonates, make a simple commitment. Don't focus on the outcome. Don't focus on perfection. Focus on continuity. Keep going. Because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something even more powerful. How to handle failure without losing momentum. Because failure will happen. Mistakes will happen. Things will go wrong. And if you don't know how to respond, you will stop. But if you do, failure becomes fuel. And that is where real growth begins. Chapter 17. Failure is feedback. How to keep moving. When things go wrong, there's a moment that stops most people. It's not the beginning. It's not the effort. It's not even the struggle. It's failure. You try something, it doesn't work. You put in effort and see no result. Or worse, you get a negative result. And in that moment, everything becomes emotional. Doubt creeps in, frustration builds, and a question appears. Maybe this isn't for me. This is where most people quit. Not because they're incapable, but because they don't understand failure. Let's change that. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of it. Read that again. Because once you truly understand this, everything shifts. Failure is feedback. It tells you what doesn't work, where you need to improve, what needs to change. But most people don't see it that way. They take it personally. They think, I failed, instead of, this attempt failed. That difference matters, because when you attach failure to your identity, you stop. But when you separate it, you learn. Now let's go deeper. Every skill you build requires failure. Every improvement comes from mistakes. Think about it. You don't become good at something without being bad at it first. That's the process. But most people don't want to go through that phase. They want to succeed immediately, without struggle, without mistakes. And when that doesn't happen, they quit. But the wealthy think differently. They expect failure, not because they want it, but because they understand it. They know that every attempt moves them closer, even if it doesn't work. This connects with something deeper, that real growth comes from action, feedback, and adjustment, not from avoiding mistakes altogether. That's how progress is built. Now, here's something important. Failure only becomes dangerous when you stop. One failure is information. Repeated failure without adjustment is stagnation. So the goal is not to avoid failure, it's to respond to it correctly. Let's make this practical. You start something, a skill, a side hustle, an idea. It doesn't work. Instead of quitting, you ask questions. What went wrong? What can I improve? What can I do differently next time? And then you try again. That's the cycle. Action, feedback, adjustment, over and over until something clicks. And eventually, it does. But only if you stay in the process. Now let's go even deeper. Failure builds resilience, the ability to continue, even when things don't go your way. And resilience is one of the most valuable traits you can develop, because life will not always go smoothly. There will be setbacks, mistakes, unexpected challenges, and if you don't know how to handle them, you will stop. But if you do, you become stronger. You become adaptable. You become someone who doesn't quit. And that is powerful. Now here's something most people don't realize. Failure feels worse when your identity is weak. If you don't trust yourself, every mistake feels like proof that you can't do it. But if your identity is strong, failure feels like part of the process. That's why everything we've talked about connects. Consistency builds identity. Identity builds confidence. confidence changes how you see failure. It all works together. Now let's bring this back to you. Right now, you're going to face moments where things don't work, where progress feels slow, where results don't show up. And in those moments, you have a choice: stop or continue. And that choice defines your future, because success is not about avoiding failure. It's about continuing through it. Let's make this real. Think about something you've tried before and stopped. What if you had continued? What if you had adjusted instead of quitting? Where would you be now? That's the cost of stopping. Lost potential. But here's the good news. You can start again, not from zero, but from experience. Because everything you've learned still matters. So instead of fearing failure, use it, learn from it, grow through it, and keep moving. If this chapter is hitting you, pause for a moment and ask yourself, how do I react when things don't go my way? Do you stop or do you adjust? Because that answer determines your growth. If this resonates, make a quiet decision, not to avoid failure, but to move through it. Because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something even more powerful: identity. Not just what you do, but who you become. Because lasting success is not built on temporary actions. It's built on identity. And once you shift how you see yourself, everything else becomes easier. That is where real transformation happens. Chapter 18, Identity, becoming the person who builds, not just tries. There is a level beyond action, beyond discipline, beyond consistency, beyond effort. And most people never reach it because they focus on what they do instead of who they are becoming. You can force yourself to act for a short time. You can push yourself for a few days, maybe even a few weeks. But if your identity doesn't change, you will always fall back, because behavior follows identity. If you see yourself as someone who tries, you will act like someone who tries. You'll start, stop, restart. But if you see yourself as someone who builds, everything shifts. You don't ask, do I feel like doing this today? You act because that's who I am. This is the level where things become powerful. Let's break this down. Right now, you have an identity, not one you chose consciously, but one you built over time, through habits, through experiences, through repeated actions. Maybe you see yourself as someone who procrastinates, someone who starts but doesn't finish, someone who lacks discipline. And if that's your identity, your actions will match it. Not because you want that, but because it feels familiar. Now here's the truth. You don't change your life by forcing actions. You change your life by shifting identity. Because once your identity changes, your actions follow naturally. This connects deeply with something you've already seen, that people who take ownership of their life begin to act differently because they see themselves differently. Identity drives everything. So how do you change it? Not through thinking, not through motivation, through evidence, small actions, repeated consistently, that proves something new to yourself. Every time you show up, you reinforce a new identity. I am someone who follows through. Every time you stay consistent, you strengthen it. I am someone who builds daily. Every time you push through resistance, you lock it in. I am disciplined. And over time, this becomes real, not something you say, but something you are. Now let's go deeper. Identity is not built in big moments. It's built in small decisions. The choice to show up, the choice to focus, the choice to continue again and again until it becomes automatic. And once it becomes automatic, you stop relying on willpower because you're not forcing yourself anymore. You're just being yourself. This is where everything becomes easier, not because the work disappears, but because resistance decreases. You don't argue with yourself. You don't negotiate. You just act. Now here's something powerful. When your identity shifts, your standards rise. What you once accepted, you no longer tolerate. Distraction, less appealing. Excuses, less convincing. Inconsistency, unacceptable. Because it no longer matches who you are. And that's where real change happens. Now let's make this practical. Instead of focusing on goals, focus on identity. Don't say, I want to build a successful side hustle. Say, I am someone who builds daily. Don't say, I want to be disciplined. Say, I am someone who follows through. This might sound simple, but it's powerful because it shifts your focus from outcome to behavior, and behavior creates outcome. Now, here's the key. You have to prove it, not once, not occasionally, consistently, because identity is built through repetition. Every action is a vote for the person you're becoming, and over time, those votes add up until there's no doubt. You don't question it, you don't hesitate, you just are. Now let's bring this back to your journey right now. You're not just building a side hustle, you're building yourself, your discipline, your focus, your consistency, and those things will impact every area of your life, not just money, not just work, everything. Because once you become someone who builds, you can build anything. If this chapter is hitting you, pause for a moment and ask yourself, who am I becoming through my daily actions? Because that question is more important than any goal. If this resonates, make a quiet decision, not just to do the work, but to become the person who does it. Because in the next chapter, we're going to bring everything together, your habits, your time, your mindset, into one clear system, a way to structure your life. So progress becomes automatic. And once you understand it, you'll stop relying on motivation completely and start building with precision. That is where real control begins. Chapter 19, The One Truth, the hour that changes everything. There is one thing, simple, quiet, almost easy to ignore, but it decides everything. Not your job, not your past, not your circumstances. Your hour, that 1 hour, after your responsibilities are done, after the world stops demanding from you, the hour that belongs to you. This is where your future is built. Not in meetings, not in routines you didn't choose, but in that 1 hour when no one is watching. Let's bring everything together. Your mindset, your discipline, your system, your identity. It all lives in that hour. Because that hour is a mirror. It reflects your priorities, your focus, your intention, and over time, it shapes your life. Most people waste it. They scroll, they consume, they escape, not because they're lazy, but because they're unaware of its power. But now, you see it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, because now you understand something most people don't. Your future is not built in big moments. It's built in small, repeated hours. That's the truth. Now here's where everything becomes real. This audiobook was never about information. It was about awareness. And awareness is only powerful if it leads to action. So now the question is simple. What will you do with your hour? Will you protect it, use it, build with it, or will you lose it, like most people do? Because the choice is yours. Not tomorrow, tonight, now. Let's go deeper one last time. This journey you're starting, it's not easy. There will be days you feel tired, days you doubt yourself, days where progress feels invisible. But those days are the ones that matter most, because every time you show up, you build something, not just your side hustle, yourself, your discipline, your focus, your identity, and that is the real reward. Because once you become someone who builds, you don't stop, you don't go back, you continue, and over time, everything changes. Your income, your opportunities, your freedom, not instantly, but inevitably, because consistency always wins. Now take a moment. Reflect on everything you've heard, the shifts, the insights, the realization that something in your life needs to change, and ask yourself, what version of me walks away from this? The one who felt inspired but does nothing, or the one who acts quietly, consistently, relentlessly? Because that decision is everything. Now, before we close, let's make this real. If this audiobook impacted you, if something here stayed with you, make it a contract. Not with me. With yourself, a simple agreement that starting today, you protect your hour, that you build, even when it's hard, even when it's slow, even when no one sees it, because one day they will. Not because you told them, but because the results will speak. And if this message resonated with you, take a moment, lock it in. Maybe even share the one idea that hit you the hardest. Because clarity grows when you express it. And if you want to stay consistent on this path, stay connected to ideas like this. Not for motivation, but for direction. Because the journey doesn't end here. It continues with every hour you protect, every action you take, every decision you make. And now, you know what to do. So don't wait, don't hesitate, don't overthink. Because everything you want to build starts now with 1 hour. And here's the final line, the one you come back to whenever you feel lost, whenever you feel tired, whenever you feel like stopping. The life you want is built in the hours you used to waste. Hold on to that and build. Now tell me, what's the next audiobook you want to hear?